Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today at the Leaders Speak. Today, we have two special guests with us. You've always seen one person, but today we have two people, one with an entrepreneur background, and the other person who is bringing diverse things into the picture. And he's been a veteran in the cybersecurity space. So let's welcome Ashling. She has been Silicon Valley entrepreneur around cybersecurity companies. Currently, she's a chief business and growth officer at Synac. And Ron, he's a veteran in the cybersecurity teams. He's driving security transformation at Synac with the customers. Two amazing people in one picture. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Bandana, three amazing people.
Great, yeah.
Let's not skip you.
Thank you so much for joining me for a day in the life of a CISO. But I would say it's not just a CISO, but CISO as well as entrepreneur. So I will start off with the questions around entrepreneur journey of Ashling. So Ashling, over to you. We want to know more about you and your journey.
We won't have time to go into all of it. I'm way too old, but I will say, I'm an immigrant to the United States. I grew up in Ireland, and I grew up in Ireland at a time where there just wasn't a huge amount of opportunity. The country was struggling, and so I came to America on athletic scholarship, believe it or not, and I never thought I was going to stay. I thought I was going to be here for 4 years and I would go home. Much to my mother's dismay, she's still in Ireland. I'm still here, and I'm on the wrong coast. I'm on the West Coast, but it has been fascinating. I really do feel like I was able to participate in such an exciting economy, such an exciting time. And kind of unknowingly, I wandered in Vandana. I didn't have any pressure or this dream or you have to be this or that. I kind of found the world and explored it. And when I ended up in Silicon Valley, I didn't even know what a startup was at first. And so I decided I would join a bigger company to kind of learn what bigger companies did. And I went to Sun Microsystems, and there I got to be part of the Java community from the very early days. We actually ended up doing a lot of events in India, etc. It was one of our favorite things to do, was to run Java 1 in India, because the crowd was so appreciative. The people were so appreciative. So I got to be part of the early days of open source. I got to be part of the early cloud. So it was fascinating to be part. So even though I was at a big company, I felt like I really got a basis in entrepreneurship. But I decided I wanted to start growing things and go from the very nascent days to growing them into something impactful. And that's what I've done. I say that when I worked on the first cloud, when we pushed it out, it was called SunGrid. When we pushed it out, we had a denial of service attack on day one. And that opened my eyes to the importance of security. You can do so many things right and put so much effort in, and yet security can drag everything to a halt. So I've really been focused on security in the last 8 to 10 years. I joined the Synac team when it was just Jay and Mark in the basement over at the venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins, and we were whiteboarding all of this at the time. A lot of people think that to be an entrepreneur, it's about, sitting on beanbags in offices and bringing in lunch and, all of these crazy images that you get from TV shows on startups and things like that. But the reality is, I think startup and being an entrepreneur is about having a passion and a belief, seeing an opportunity to actually make something better, to fix something, to evolve something, to make it better, and not being afraid. You have to have courage. I'd say that's at the core. It's this passion and this courage, because you have to swing, right? You have to be okay failing. You can't win unless you're okay failing. And so I think a lot of people think it has to be done in Silicon Valley or it has to be done in a certain way. I actually go back to, that's the core belief with that. And then once you are in a startup, you've got to stick with that courage. You have to have conviction, because everyone's going to tell you you can't do it, and it gets hard at times, right? Because you're trying to change something dramatic. I always say that the people who go into startups and entrepreneurship just to make money, I'm not nuts about that. I really believe the people who do best are the people who are literally trying to change the world. Even Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, you can criticize him, whatever, but he was just a nerd trying to get a date. And if you look at that, he had a purpose. It wasn't to become a billionaire. It was purpose. So anyway, that's my belief in entrepreneurship, and my shout out to anyone out there who has that passion and that courage is pursue it.
Incredible journey, Ashling. I am so looking forward to learning from you and from the journey that you had. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Now, Ron, over to you. And we want to know more about your experience as a CISO. What are the hurdles that you have faced? And how did you overcome those hurdles to change the organization's view, as well as the digital transformation that you have planned in the past? And even you have a great vision for CINAC at the moment. So we want to know more about that.
Security's hard. Most organizations see it as a hindrance and not necessarily a value add. So a lot of it is just helping the organization understand the value of making the organization stronger. I mean, that's a hard concept for a lot of people, because it means you have to shift priority, right? You have to stop doing the things that you think are going to drive customers and build secure applications. And that's a difficult challenge at times. So a lot of times it's really about helping people understand the value, bringing in people who are going to help you kind of send that message, and that you can be a partner rather than a hindrance.
It's amazing, Vandana, I found in my career at a lot of companies, security is brought in at the very end. It's brought in as a checkbox, or a compliance feature. And it can't be that way. Security where you do 2 tests a year in order to check compliance is ridiculous. That was in the old days, and I was there with where we put software on disks and we shipped them out twice a year, right? And so you would test them before you ship. Now security, it's really about insights. It's about data, right? And Ron is a huge believer in this. It's about having that data to work with your development team the whole way along the way. One of the problems, and Ron is just highlighting it, is, there is the chance that you're going to come in with data that might slow something down. And that's where I think you get pushback, right, Ron? Instead of them seeing that if they fix that now, it may slow you down by days, but speed you up by months.
Yeah.
Right?
And a lot of times there's the quality of your data is a challenge, right? Like relationships with security and development are very much about trust. And if you bring them data that you don't necessarily have faith in, or that isn't accurate, they very much that trust relationship starts to break down. And that's how good organizations build security. It's about building trust within the organization, and everybody feels like we're working towards something. People care about security, but they don't necessarily like work that doesn't lead to something that brings progress.
They think of revenue. Unfortunately, in the Valley, I've found for long enough that if you're revenue generating, you get into all the right meetings and you get all of the right things. Whereas if you're a cost center, as Ron said, you can be just this add-on. It's crazy. I actually think people, we just put out the trust report from CINAC, and it's where we look at all of our customers in aggregate and how they're improving, what they're finding, how they're improving. So a lot of the data from what we're testing, et cetera. And what we find is the companies that do best, the brands that do best, have security integrated in. Right? They care because they care about their customers. They care about the trust they're building with their customers. So a trusted brand is a secure brand, right? Those things go hand in hand. Is a profitable brand, unless you're screwing something else up. But so again, it's really a matter of changing it. Now, what we found is by harnessing the community of researchers from around the world, we can offer this continuous security at a pace and a cadence and a quality that just far outpaces anything that was possible in the past. We're incredibly grateful to our Indian community because they're a huge part of that. The brains, the intelligence, the passion we see coming out of our Indian community is critical. And it's been so helpful. And I think as Ron found, he used to be a customer of ours. And what he found was just the quality of the data and the insights empowered him with the ability to be part of that development, the core product team, to provide these insights, provide this data so that they could be stronger, better, more trusted, etc. Ron, you want to talk about that and that, you know, where we fit in the kind of digital transformation?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies were going very much to this fast development cycle, this agile development cycle, right? So there's not always time to test. And you know, in my career, it was very much, let's get these products out, let's get them moving, and figuring out the right way to really provide a level of assurance that we were safe. I mean, that's really a CISO's job. In the end of the day, is really to protect the business, right? Like that's the core of it, and it's to promote security within the business. And you know, we were able to do a lot of good work with Synac just because we were able to move at a speed that development. We were there to help them rather than a hindrance. And a lot of times that's what testing is it's oh, we have to stop, we have to do this, and we have to shift. You know, integrating into the process and moving how developers move really makes it feel like we're a part of the discussion, and they're invested, right? Like they feel like they're getting something, they feel like they're getting good results, and they want to fix them.
Hey, Ron, I've heard you
Yeah.
say you had a full head of hair when you started in security. What's the
That
hard part?
that in kids did not help.
What's the hard part? Tell Vandana, what's the hardest part of the being in a security team?
You know, I think the hardest part of being in a security team is really changing perception. You know, there's tools for days.
Mhm.
There's always a solution, but the problem is really the trust. Like I don't think I've ever been in an organization where people didn't want to fix something, but they didn't want to waste their time. They always wanted to feel like what they were working on was really driving towards a result. No one ever wants to deal with an incident or a breach because those completely change your time and your cycles. Everything stops for weeks and sometimes months. But you know, you really have to, the trust part takes a long time to build, because a lot of times you never start from scratch. You're always trying to say, look, this is the right thing you need to do, and this is really going to make us successful.
Yeah, I do have a question on the same lines, like convincing the teams, convincing everyone around for security, because when we see as a holistic picture, it's everyone's responsibility, not just the CISO responsibility, but everyone's responsibility. And how do you actually communicate with the board, especially when it comes to budget for security? Because that's one critical aspect, which I think a lot of organizations still struggle, a lot of CISOs still struggle. So how have you handled those in the past?
You know, a lot of that really comes down to bringing results that are actionable, bringing them information that they can digest. A lot of boards and executives, they don't have technical backgrounds, or they may not have technical backgrounds. They certainly may not have security backgrounds. Giving them information and results that are tangible and that make sense are the ones that are going to deliver the most value. When you try to get into the weeds on you know, well, this measurable or this KPI, sometimes they gloss over it. But if you can say, look, we're safe, and a lot of times that was the number one question that executives would ask is, you know, hey, this thing happened, could this happen to us? Like it wasn't, you know, what are the 10 tools or what are the things we have? It was, can that happen to us? And a lot of times, you know, there were hours to answer that question.
Yeah. Executives are ADD, you know, attention deficit disorder. We jump into subjects and we want to grasp them quickly, and we don't have always a lot of detail and data. And so I think it is important, as Ron said, to be able to speak to it at the level where the executives can understand. Now, I think oftentimes executives will trivialize that, are we safe? And they want a simple yes or no. And of course, it's not really a yes. And so one of the things we find that's a score that's a kind of a nice balance between a security team who wants to go into detail on things and has a lot of technical detail, and an executive team that just wants to know, as Ron said, am I secure? And you just can't answer yes or no, but you can give a gauge. These applications, these digital assets are a little bit more secure. These are more robust. It took longer to break into these. versus these other assets over there. One thing, Vandana, that I find we always get asked, and Ron, I'm sure you've seen a lot of this, is how do I compare to the other people in my industry? So if I'm a bank, I want to know how I compare to banks. If I'm e-commerce, how do I compare? It's great to see how you compare, and our trust report covers that. But at some level, I always say here, I don't know how it'll carry. It's not like you're all in Yosemite and there's one bear chasing you and they're going to catch the slowest guy. It's everyone has to be pretty secure, because there's a lot of people out there coming at different people, and you may be more secure than the guy behind you, but researchers aren't going to always know that, or hackers aren't going to always know that from where they sit. They might still go after you. So it's not good enough just to be more secure than the others in the industry. You have to keep pushing that to feel really comfortable that you have a robust score, that you are doing what it takes to integrate security into your development process as part of the digital transformation, so that you feel confident that you have good security insights and data, that you're leveraging them constantly, fixing assets and putting out trusted assets.
Yeah, totally true on that. Now, one question around, if you have to give some advice to the people who are joining industry as a leader, as a CISO, especially the new or the budding CISOs, how can they leverage all of these things and be more confident when they are speaking with the boards, when they are making strategies, or how should they take the step further regarding the new strategies they are building, or they're going to build, because the time is changing, and especially the past 1.5 years has showed us so much that you have to shift the gears super soon. Sometimes it's so fast that you have to cope up with all the things. So how exactly they can relate to this, and they can build the strategies around security?
I think one of the most important things coming into an environment or the kind of those early days are really, you got to know the landscape. You got to figure out where the risks are. You got to build, there's a common, build a risk register, where all your issues lie. Just like a general was to, survey a battlefield, right? You need to understand where your weak points are. Once you have that, it's really about that prioritization of where things are going to come in. So a lot of teams will harden that external crust and make sure that they're protecting from external attackers, and that allows them time to fix the internal things. The other thing is build relationships. A lot of security teams are not in control of their own destiny, right? Like, they don't own the technology. They may not own the servers and systems. They may not own the development stack, right? Like they generally don't. So a lot of times you need to build those relationships and say, hey, how can I help you? What do you need from me that's going to allow you to move faster? And then really coming back as an executive or as a leader for security, and figuring out, like, okay, how can I integrate what I want to do into what they're doing and help them move quickly? Being an enabler is really what drives security, and it has to happen all throughout the security organization. You really have to help the organization move forward, because that's really what's going to pull security into the rest of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Without the collaboration, without connecting with each other and speaking out their mind, it is not possible to have the kind of goal that that is there for an organization. So it's very, very important to think holistically, connect with people, bring out the strategies along with everyone, because it's not a one-man show. Everyone has to get involved in it.
Right.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you so much, Aisling and Ron, for joining me today. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Vandana. Really appreciate it. And again, huge shout out to our community in India. We appreciate, we see the value, tremendous group. So thank you for all of your loyalty and commitment. And we look forward to many years working together.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yes, shout out to all the Indian community who's working with SINAC. Thank you.
Thanks.